Good morning, everyone. Bill Phillips here, Prince George Daily News, and I'm joined today by Cariboo-Prince George Liberal candidate, Garth Frizzell. Most of you probably, at least in Prince George, know Garth pretty good. He's been on council for way too many years to count, right? It's been a long time. Yeah, he's decided to move up a level or two in politics. If you say moving up to the federal scene is moving up, he's running for the Liberals in Cariboo-Prince George. And welcome, Garth. And maybe just tell everybody a little bit about yourself, for people that don't know, and then what prompted you to put your name forward to run for the Liberals.
Sure, and thanks, Bill. I wanted to say how much I appreciate you doing this. The media has changed over the years, so getting an opportunity to do this with all of the candidates is really important. Hi, I'm Garth Frizzell, resident in Prince George, and some of you I've met on the trail already in Quesnel and Vanderhoof, Williams Lake. My background, as Bill said, 13 years as a city councillor. The past 5 of these I've been the chair of the city's Standing Committee on Finance and Audit. So over those last 20 years here in Northern BC, I originally came up just for 2 years, like many people, and stayed just because I fell in love with the place. I started a technology business as a student. I got started with one computer in my rented basement suite. We built that into a corporation that had 13 staff throughout Canada. So the North has been really good to us. And with my wife, Sue, we're raising 3 boys. The eldest has just moved on. He's a carpenter's assistant, and the other 2 are finishing off high school. Over these last 11 years in particular, I've also been volunteering with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. So in the last year, I was the president of the Federation. And of course, that coincided with the pandemic. And one thing that I really saw was Canada's political orders of government getting together against the crisis. It was a really positive thing compared with what we see in other countries. We weren't ripping ourselves apart, we were working together. And that meant weekly, bi-weekly meetings with cabinet ministers and several meetings with the Prime Minister himself. My mission at that time was really nonpartisan. It was to look after municipalities in Canada because we were getting devastated by revenue shortfalls and serious problems. What we saw was that federal government listened, and we saw programs like the Safe Restart program. So just as a little background, as president of that federation, that meant I was representing 2,000 municipalities across Canada, from Toronto to Silverton, BC. It was all of them working together. And the package that came out to support municipalities, $8.6 billion, meant direct support to the bottom line of our municipalities, big and small. In Williams Lake and in Quesnel, that meant $2.5 million straight into the budget that we could spend in the areas we needed the most. Prince George, another $6 million. And every community got some of that support. We needed it. And what struck me at the time was Canada really functions well when we are consulting, when we are identifying where the problems are and then solving those problems. Then about a month and a half ago, I got a call from the Prime Minister saying, "Hey, I know you're finished your work with the Federation. I'd really like you to come and join our team." And I thought long and hard about it. And I saw that here was a government that was listening, but wasn't just listening, they were taking action. So I agreed. I think we're getting close to beating COVID-19, but we're not there yet. And this is the right path for getting us through the last of this pandemic, Bill.
Right on. So, like the first question is the question that I'm sure all the Liberal candidates are getting is, why are we having this election in the first place? Most people call it an unnecessary election, and are kind of trying to figure out why we're having this in the middle of a pandemic and here in BC in the middle of wildfires and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's one I grapple with because coming from all my years in municipal government, those are fixed election dates, and when I see that the political parties make those decisions, I mean, last year alone we had Oregon making the same decision, having an election in the middle of a pandemic, and you can bet that if O'Toole had ever managed to get 10 points up, he would have sold his proverbial puppy if that's what it took to force an election too. I don't understand that particularly, Bill, but we know that all the political parties do it, and now we're going through this, and this is my first time out. I might not have made that decision myself, but we're in it now.
Mm-hmm. And while you have an extensive experience on the municipal level, you have a little bit of experience on the federal level in that you ran Tracy Kalogeros' campaign last time, or you were involved in it. I don't know if you ran it, but.
Oh, I believe in the person, but I was really on a strict nonpartisan mission for the last 13 years. So Tracy was the right person, and I supported her on that one, but I haven't really been involved on the political party front until this just very recently when I finished off my term.
Oh yeah, right on. So what do you see when you're out door knocking in Cariboo-Prince George? What are people telling you that the issues are, and following up on that, what are some of the issues that you want to highlight during the campaign or focus on?
Door knocking, we are hearing housing, shortages, Vanderhoof, Prince George, Quesnel. It's really been highlighted, and it's something that the platform that Liberal parties put out is really addressing strongly. Look, in Prince George, we have seen a big uptick in construction. You've seen huge record-breaking building permits year after year, but there's still increased demand out there. The supply hasn't increased. So with the re-elected Liberal government, we're going to make home ownership for the middle class easier, or we've got programs to increase supply. And I can speak from experience. The rapid housing initiative that the Liberals put in over the last year and a half, it was a direct subsidy from the federal government to municipal governments, and it got money out the door quickly, and it got housing available quickly too. Really effective. So housing's been out there. Climate change. I mean, if any place is ground zero for the need to start addressing climate change, it's from Williams Lake to Prince George to Vanderhoof. Our summers now have been more about the talk of how much smoke there's going to be this week than anything else. The mountain pine beetle, it devastated the annual allowable cut. Our economy is being hurt. Our health is being hurt. If anywhere in Canada resonates with the need for climate change, it's Cariboo-Prince George. And I thought it was really reassuring. I read the climate change adaptation strategy that the Liberal Party put out, and I thought it was impressive. But yesterday we saw even Andrew Weaver, the former leader of the BC Green Party, saying that it was the only credible science-aligned climate plan that any of the federal parties have put out to date. So it's the right party for addressing climate change.
Can you touch a little bit on what that plan would entail?
Sure. Some of the things that directly impact us. There's areas right here in our riding where people are close to floodplains and can't get the level of insurance that they need. So we're going to put in place a high risk insurance program so that people who are having trouble getting access to homeowner insurance are going to get that. Going to put in place ways for homeowners to make their construction more resilient for as climate change hits us harder. Working with municipalities again. Now through the Green Municipal Fund that the Federation of Canadian Municipalities has, we've been announcing programs on a regular basis that help to mitigate climate change, reduce greenhouse gas emissions as well. Right here in Prince George, for instance, the new swimming pool that's being built through the ISIP program is going to have a 90% reduction in greenhouse gases over what a traditional pool would look like.
Wow.
Programs all over, and we're going to get to net zero by 2050.
Right on. That's impressive if we can do it, because that's one of the things I look at is that I watch some of the campaign at the federal level, and I don't see climate change being front and center as much as probably I'd like it to be anyway. So
yeah. Well, it's the central defining issue. It impacts everywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned housing as well. Maybe you could just touch a little bit on the Liberal housing plan, what that's going to entail. Because, like I say, in Prince George, we're seeing that, seeing the prices go up. I don't think they're quite out of reach like Vancouver yet, but I think a lot of people here are sitting pretty. If they bought a house for a couple $100,000 10 or 15 years ago, it's probably now worth $500,000. So.
A lot of the parties are taking up BC's direction on how to curb some of the impacts of foreign ownership and make sure that it's actually houses that people are living in. And I could go on for about an hour just on all of the different programs, but let me hit some of the highlights of what the housing affordability plan includes. We're going to double the first-time home buyers tax credit from $5,000 to $10,000. Going to reduce the price charges by CMHC on mortgage insurance by 25%. Going to bring it down. For a typical home buyer, that's going to save them $6,100. Pretty substantial. Going to unlock about $1 billion in loans and grants to develop and scale up rent-to-own programs. This is important. So if you're renting right now and you're considering it, we got a plan to help you get from rental into home ownership. We're going to put in place an Indigenous home plan. So it's going to make it, the current system needs to be augmented for our Indigenous peoples. And generally, it's three areas. Make it easier for middle class to get a home, increase the supply of housing, and then make sure that people are protected, that homeowners are protected from predatory schemes, from schemes that will increase the price and make it harder for you to get a house. So those three areas, and encourage you to take a look at the whole platform. It's substantial. And I'll remind you that the National Housing Strategy, the first one Canada had, it just came in the last few years under the Liberal government.
Yeah, right on. Switching up a little bit more to the Cariboo-Prince George riding. This has been traditionally held by the Conservatives for a long, long time. 2015, I think, was probably the closest in recent memory that it had of not going Conservative. Todd Doherty, I think, captured 52% of the vote in 2019, somewhere around there. So what do you think your chances are, and how do you prepare or campaign to climb that hill and unseat an incumbent who's been here for 6 years?
Well, it's presented as a big mountain, but the only way you get over a mountain is by starting to climb. And the more I start talking to people, the more see that there are lots of Liberals out there, and that the policies. The interesting part is, it seems that this is going to be an election that's really fought on the policies. And the Liberals have better policies. They've got better policies on climate, housing, on reconciliation. It's a tough nut to crack. But important part is people are reasonable. And when they hear that the policies are better, and that in the past, the representation has meant votes, your Cariboo-Prince George voting against net zero emissions by 2050, not being present on votes on UNDRIP and reconciliation and on conversion therapy. So I think that even though just saying that we want someone to again be in opposition, we want to be fantastic critics, I don't think that washes anymore. We don't need to be just great critics. We can be informing the government, having a seat at the table, because, as I've said again, the problems of this election, they are they're a microcosm of what's going on right here in Cariboo-Prince George. We're really leading the way in what Canada needs to address. So let's have a seat at the table.
Mhm. Yeah, I've talked to some of the candidates, and that's the sort of get the same answer on you know, what are the local issues, and all these issues that are a national focus, they are local issues as well, right? Climate change and housing and all these things. So it's tough to have any specific issues. And yeah, I was going to ask you for a bit of your thoughts on how well the area has been represented by Todd Doherty, but and you may have a better insight going through being a local politician at the municipal level and FCM and in dealing with Todd. But I think you kind of touched on it there about some of the votes that weren't there. So.
Well, he's a heck of a nice guy. I mean, we go out motorcycle riding together, and it's really congenial as anything. It's and you know, he's been doing his job as a critic. It's just maybe time that Cariboo-Prince George changed from being in the critic's role to another. And I'll have a chance to chat about him. I'm going to have to wrap up quick, Bill, because all of the candidates are called up to Elections Canada for 10:30. So yeah, I've got to race up to meet up with all of the candidates and our chief returning officer. That's in just a few minutes away.
Okay, well then I'll wrap up by asking the question that I ask every candidate is, why should I or anyone vote for you?
Well, let me put it quickly. Don't just judge on promises, judge on record. For the past 13 years, I've been dedicated. I've been devoted to being an elected official. I've taken on every role. I don't look in my lap when people look for volunteers. I jump to the front. And I've gotten positions of increasing responsibility, including last year when, through a pandemic, I led an entire order of Canada's government through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. I've got a business background. I've got a family that I dearly love. I'm invested in this community throughout Northern BC. And I tell you, I take the responsibility seriously, and I know how to build coalitions so that we can get things done like we did last year. Don't just take my word for it. Look to my record. I've been here for more than a decade, and I want to represent you.
Excellent. So we've been talking with Garth Frizzell, who's the Liberal candidate for Cariboo-Prince George. And remember, we vote on September 20th, but there are all kinds of other voting options out there for you: advanced polls, mail-in ballots, all that kind of thing. So you should be getting your card in the mail from Elections Canada very soon, and remember to vote. And I want to thank Garth once again, and good luck on September 20th.
Great, thanks a lot, Bill. Have a great day. And to all of you, I'm at www.garthfrizzell.ca.